Since the dawn of mankind, escapism has existed as a mechanism for us to deal with pretty shitty situations. And boy, don't even get me started on 2020. Due to a certain virus and a certain global response to said virus, I've spent a lot of time indoors, just like you probably have, since that's the benchmark for being a good member of society now. And wouldn't you know it, one thing I've done a whole lot of is play the escapist dream game, Animal Crossing New Horizons. Then I had a conversation with a friend who had never played an Animal Crossing before and wanted to know what the big deal was, what it was about, and why it was worth getting, because he said it looked pretty dumb on a surface level. I thought about it for a few minutes, but I honestly couldn't find an answer for him. That friend has since poured over 100 hours into the game, but I digress. The point is, I just couldn't articulate what Animal Crossing was, but even more importantly, what it was about. That question has lingered with me, so let's get a little philosophical today. What is Animal Crossing about? Obviously, I'm not talking about the plot here, if you could even say Animal Crossing has one. Sure, you pop onto a tropical island, and you owe an obscene amount of money to a raccoon businessman to pay off various loans, and you're also tasked with making the island look nice, whether it's through decorating outdoor areas, chopping trees, planting flowers, spending a stupid amount of money on upgrades.
$430,000 in 1 month, Jordy? Huh?
They're business expenses.
Yes. Jordy, look what you got here.
What?
Look at this. $26,000 for one dinner.
No, this could be explained.
And even more. So that's what happens in Animal Crossing, but that's not what it's about. Most works of art, be it a movie, book, video game, have some sort of subtext. There's always commentary on the state of human existence, politics, morality, or
Society!
I know, I sound really pretentious here. But even works that have marketed themselves on rejecting meaning, for example Seinfeld, which literally called itself the show about nothing, are still about something. The very representation of everyday life presents meaning in itself. Even Nintendo, a company known for often simplistic narratives, provides experiences that offer some sort of argument or at least appeal to some universal emotion. Pokémon is about achieving a goal, leveling up your partner, seeing their growth and literal transformation, and The Legend of Zelda is definitely a voyage type story, because it reflects real world epics like the Odyssey. So yeah, I mean, not every game puts the story first or even has a layer of thought behind it. Games in the Mario series and competitive games like Splatoon clearly put the gameplay first, and they're not offering any narrative, but instead a straightforward gaming experience. But to me, Animal Crossing is stuck somewhere in the middle. The gaming isn't complex enough for it to be a hollow vessel for a purely sensory experience with no narrative. Because of everything I've just said, the simplistic gaming nature of Animal Crossing leads me to believe that there actually is some sort of meaning behind its admittedly simple narrative. So to find out its meaning, let's go back to my first mention in this video, the notion of escapism. Escapism might actually not be the right word to use when analyzing Animal Crossing. That's because escapism usually implies a dissatisfaction with everyday life and the trading of your boring reality for something fantastical instead, something that usually results in adventures, conflicts, and all that good stuff. But if you're playing Animal Crossing to seek escapism in the traditional sense of the word, you're out of luck. Aside from being the only human in a community of sentient animals, your days are spent doing the mundane, pulling weeds, planting flowers, crafting wooden materials. Simply put, that's probably even more boring than the stuff you do in real life. Also, a lot of video games offer progression that happens as fast as you want it to be. In Pokémon, you can go from a random kid to a champion in like 10 hours if you speedrun it, but in Animal Crossing, stuff happens in real life. If you want to wait for that tree to grow, you have to wait in real time. So instead of looking at Animal Crossing as a form of escapism, we should instead look at Animal Crossing as something whose meaning instead comes from doing the opposite of something fantastical or otherworldly. We have to look backwards to something a lot more simplistic. Furusato is an important word that can be used to define Animal Crossing's meaning. It's a Japanese word that means hometown, but it also has cultural connotations of nostalgia, simplicity, and a desirable rustic aesthetic more tied to the outdoors than anything. This is seen as a response to Japan's increasingly urbanized lifestyle, where many people prefer the countryside villages that their ancestors came from. Before industrialization, the Furusato life offered exactly what Animal Crossing does. Simple actions like bug catching, fishing, or crafting that are actually framed as beautiful and meditative activities instead of mundane chores. This is the root of the Pokémon franchise as well, where the creator of Pokémon, Satoshi Tajiri, grew up bug catching And the Pokemon franchise stemmed from his frustration that a new generation of kids might not be able to experience this because of rampant industrialization that took over natural landscapes. So Furusato is absolutely rooted in Japanese media. This idea is also present in Western philosophy. Transcendentalism was a big movement in the 19th century where writers like Thoreau preached a way of life that was a response to urban living, which they believed corrupted moral purity, and suggested that humans had an inherent goodness that could only be brought out through simplistic living. While I don't know if Animal Crossing was explicitly inspired by Western or even Eastern philosophies, I think there's definitely a narrative and meaning to be gathered here. But there's also counterpoints to be made. That's because in Animal Crossing, this simple pastoral lifestyle isn't exactly the endgame. It's actually quite the opposite. You get to a deserted island and live in a tent to start with, but as the game goes on, you're encouraged to exploit the natural resources of the land and sell things for bells, which you can then buy items with and decorate your home, wardrobe, and build up a town from scratch. You can even terraform, build bridges, and place industrial objects like telephone poles, pools, and vending machines. And when you look at the metagame of Animal Crossing, so to speak, there's countless online communities on Reddit where people trade, sell, and catalog different items like the world's biggest virtual yard sale. So it's just not true to say that it's about a simplistic return to the countryside, because more often than not, you're spending millions of bells and trading fruit and other objects the island offers you in exchange for fancy items that exist solely for you to show off. Also, you have total control over the town's layout. You can design yards for your villagers and they can't do so much as pick the flowers you place down. So this level of control, almost dictator-like, negates the personal freedoms that Transcendentalism preaches. I know I've looked at both sides of Animal Crossing. There's the rustic Furusato lifestyle that the game glamorizes, and there's also the never-ending capitalist treasure hunt that the game offers. So to end this whole thing, I'm ready to propose what Animal Crossing really means, and what it's really about. And what that is actually an idealistic balance between all these things. In this series, it celebrates the endorphin rush of materialistic consumption, but it also offers simple joys like stargazing, fishing, and even just talking to your neighbors to keep you grounded. I'm not saying that the developers of Animal Crossing are sending a political message, but I do think that the meaning of Animal Crossing is so hard to define because the developers so deliberately struck a perfect balance between different ways of living here. So if Animal Crossing does have any meaning to be interpreted, it's not escapism, but it's actually idealism. It's suggesting that maybe, just maybe, somewhere far away, you and a few friendly animals can find a unique blend of life that favors kindness and friendship over anything else.